Hello and welcome to COP30 Covered, the daily podcast show from the award-winning Edie editorial team, where we bring you all the latest news and views from this year's climate summit, which is being hosted by Brazil. Why has the UK been voted as the fossil of the day? Who called Donald Trump an invasive species? And could we finally be seeing the end of an era of fossil fuel advertising? We explain all of this and more in 45 minutes or less per episode. Yes, this is the 6th episode of COP30 Covered from Edie. You're listening to the voice of Edie's content editor, Sarah George, and it is Thursday, the 13th of November, 2025. For today, we're back in the Edie podcast studio here in Sussex in the UK, and joining me are our editor, Matt Mace.
Hello.
And our reporter, Sidhi Mittal.
Hello.
So, how are we all?
We are good. It is tiring covering COP, and I think not just that, but when you're out at a COP, you can concentrate kind of solely on it. But when you're not there, you're covering it remotely. You still got kind of people don't go, oh, that team's out in Brazil right now, so we won't get in touch with them about a separate project. So it's kind of juggling 2 work days, if that makes sense. So I've just come from a meeting about the COP30 event that we're going to be hosting on the 20th, and it's all kind of systems go. The last kind of putting the things in place, and it's busy.
Yeah, I feel the same. And Sidhi, I know you're the same. You were out at an industry event last night, right?
Yeah, it was an event organised by Lido talking about just transition in the food sector, and I think the conversation was really interesting because oftentimes people associate just transition with just energy. So it was really interesting to hear what that could look like in the food sector, for sure.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to coming on to the sort of like food and agriculture portion of the COP next week, but we do have a lot more to think about energy in the meantime. But before we get ahead of ourselves, Sidhi, can I come to you for our daily brief of news, which I've been trying to call Top of the COPs, but which I've never quite gotten around to in previous episodes. So let's have the news in brief for our lovely listeners, please.
Yeah, so just following from the last episode where we talked a bit about the protests from the indigenous communities at COP and the discussions around human rights and land rights especially, we are seeing more indigenous presence at COP now. So thousands of indigenous people have arrived at the COP via boat, at least 100 boats to be precise, and our contacts on the ground have said that they now have a remarkable presence. With traditional dress being a regular feature in both the blue zone and the green zone. And I can echo that. I received some images in my inbox this morning, and I shared with the team as well. But yeah, it's just remarkable seeing that. But moving forward to another agenda, which is and just energy transition, which we also talked about a bit in the previous episode. Climate Action Network presents a Fossil of the Day award throughout the COP and has done now for 16 years. And while they usually call out countries like Russia, it was interesting to see that yesterday's fossil was the UK. The UK has declined to support a just energy transition mechanism at the COP. It's really interesting because from what I can see and what we can hear from our contacts on the ground, there have been continued splits over fossil fuel and temperature alignment language in certain paragraphs of the text, which has led several developed countries like EU, UK, Japan, Norway, Australia and Canada resisting the adoption of the framework. So we're going to see way more friction over there. But just talking about fossil fuels, California Governor Gavin Newsom took swings at President Donald Trump in another panel event, and he said that more oil and gas drilling off the state coast would happen over his dead body, and called Trump an invasive species. Interesting choice of words. But yeah, I mean, I think the cattiness that we saw from the World Leader Summit is gonna continue for the next couple of weeks. And then I think another thing to kind of flag is finance again. It's been one of the biggest focus areas this COP. The high-level expert group on climate finance has said that achieving the Baku to Belém roadmap goal of unlocking $1.3 trillion of annual climate finance from 2035 is entirely feasible. And we're going to see discussion on the roadmap unfold this Saturday. So really looking forward to what comes out of that conversation, because I think it's going to really set the path forward for more talks on climate finance.
Yeah, I think that's a report that's going to keep getting cited as well in people's reactions. People are going to say, just get on with it. The experts have said that it's possible, etc., etc. And in just that, we've covered loads of grounds and loads of different topics. In the interest of time, I'm going to direct our attention to one of the themes for today. So on the thematic agenda today, it's the same as yesterday, with themes all about the sort of people-centric elements of climate action and climate adaptation. So those are themes including jobs, education, health, skills, culture, justice and human rights. And another really important topic on the agenda for the first time at a COP is information integrity. So this is, as I say, it's the first time it's had quite that high of a prioritisation in the thematic agenda. And Matt, as our sort of in-house greenwashing guru, I'd love to hear a little bit about why.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify, greenwashing does not mean I am excellent at greenwashing.
No.
I just like to think I know a bit about it. Maybe I have, who knows. If it was accidental, and that's actually part of the problem. But I think, misinformation and disinformation is obviously rife. It's not just a climate issue, it's kind of invaded the political sphere as well, but it is such a big issue when we try to talk about climate. We are still somehow reverting back to that debate, despite 99 point whatever it is percent of climate science agreeing with the concept of climate change and the need to respond to it. We are still in this kind of debate and rhetoric, and we see it at a political level. You can see it all over kind of social media comments that disinformation around this is just really hindering the appetite for progress. And the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report has misinformation and disinformation as the most likely and severe global risk for the next 2 years, and even across the next 10-year period, as you would hope that the information gets better, it's still going to be in that top 6. And I think climate misinformation is becoming kind of a part of everyday life. I think Reuters Institute study found that a quarter of people believe they regularly run across climate misinformation. The actual proportion is going to be higher because people don't recognise it. They just believe it. And even as we develop into this next kind of technological era with AI and deepfakes, the possibility that we solve the misinformation crisis does not really go away. And it is incredibly important as we have these kind of global climate conversations that need to translate down into local actions, that the everyday person on the street is as bought in as the negotiations in Benning right now. It is kind of a important facet, and you can flip that into corporates as well, right? I think the perception that companies are misleading through greenwashing has grown from, I think it was 1/3 in 2023 to 2/3 now in terms of consumers that believe companies are actively greenwashing, and that can be malicious. I think a lot of climate misinformation does come from malicious sources that are trying to skew the narrative, but it can be accidental, unconscious people just getting the facts wrong. The most widely believed climate untruth right now is that natural gas is clean and low carbon way to generate electricity, and it's very much a bridge to clean low carbon electricity. And it's hard as journalists as well to kind of outline that, and I do think maybe this is just a sign of the kind of online, I suppose, world that we live in, that it feels much more tribalistic and that people are willing to stick to their guns rather than actually listen to the science, listen to the truth, and what side you're on becomes a huge part of this. So it's a massive task to overcome. We as journalists have a part to play, but we can only keep basing our reporting on integrity, hope we don't get replaced by AI anytime soon, and keep watching as the conversation around climate change continues to develop and evolve.
And I'd say that the other important part in this are the people on the other side of the coin, so the people that we work with every day, so the sort of PRs, the media agencies, and often they do send us stories that just say clean or green, and I'm like, I don't know what that means, so I'm just not going to put it in the story, and you need to give me some more numbers.
I mean, we write for sustainability professionals, right? And I'd argue sustainability as a word has lost its meaning in recent years. It means either too much or too little. It means different things to different people, and it's always had a conversation problem, and it's always had an optics problem back from the days when climate neutral was the kind of go-to buzz phrase for corporates to cling on to. Even net zero. If you're talking to your friends down the pub or in the cafe, net zero as a concept to describe can be described, but it doesn't necessarily resonate. It leaves a lot of room for confusion, and that is something that sustainability, because it's in the business sense a 25-year-old profession compared to finance that's been around and ingrained for ages, it's always going to be a problem.
I'm going through the Patagonia report right now, and something that I think is very interesting, the choice of word is preferred materials instead of sustainable materials, because they're preferred over the conventional materials that are available in the market. And I think terminology like that, which is more impact focused rather than just using words that catch attention.
Yeah, we could be here probably all day talking about different kinds of wording and which one is better and who understands it.
I will be once you guys are gone. I'll be in the studio muttering to myself.
Well, I won't be editing it, so we'll see. But I wanted to come on to the other side of the coin on this, which is essentially money. Like, as good as people's intentions can be, if you're taking money from entities that have been malicious in the past, you're probably going to greenwash. So with that in mind, it was promising to see you, Siddy, writing about new UN-backed guidance for how advertisers can sort of replace the money that they have in the past taken from their fossil fuel clients. So can you tell us a little bit more about that guidance?
Yeah, so it's a new detailed plan launched by ACT Climate Labs, and the initiative comes in response to a call from the UN Secretary General on the need to phase out fossil fuel advertising. The report mentions that companies who have fossil fuel clients earn less than 1% of their revenue from their clients, but face significant financial, legal, and reputational risk from maintaining those relationships. So the report estimates that instead of fossil fuel clients, if these advertising and media agencies engage with the circular economy, which is estimated at $4.5 trillion, that could be a major growth opportunity for the sector. And just looking at the legal risk, that come with getting out of these contracts and these relationships, I think the report does a good job at outlining the process that advertising and media companies need to engage in, so across finance, legal, compliance, board, internal culture, and then kind of think about their exit strategies, because in long term there's going to be a big risk in terms of finance, but also reputation.
Yeah, it feels like with this we're getting past the sort of stage at, pointing fingers at any one particular advertiser and saying this is bad, to looking at the practicalities of this, which is what I spoke about in our special guest interview for today. So our interviewee was from Creatives for Climate, their spokesperson and advisor, Maria Correa. And Creatives for Climate says it takes a systemic approach to reducing the influence of big polluters on the creative industries. So think advertising, PR, film and TV. It has reached more than 7,000 professionals in these industries globally. Some that work at small boutique ethical agencies, some are agencies that want to do better, and a whole host of freelancers as well, to provide them with the tools and resources that they need. So really interesting work that's going on. So here is my interview with Maria in full, with apologies in advance for her slightly reduced audio quality, because she is in the blue zone at the COP today. So Maria, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me on, and it's a pleasure to talk to you and your audiences today.
No, thank you very much for taking the time amid what looks to be like a very busy time in Belém. Can you give us a bit of a flavour of what it's been like there for you today?
Sure. It's my first COP, so it is quite an overwhelming experience, but there's over 50,000 people who've descended upon Belém. It's very hot, but it's incredibly inspiring to be walking around the Blue Zone and just see the amount of negotiations, the amount of sessions happening around, and also what's happening outside of COP, all of the local mobilizations, the indigenous groups coming together. So there's just a lot happening, and I think everybody's rushing to be a part of all of the important conversations. But really, it's what happens before and after COP that really makes a difference as well.
Yeah, completely agree with you there. So it's only 2 weeks out of the year, but as you say, it's a hugely colourful and bustling couple of weeks. And in that, you have to be really laser focused on your own agenda and your own mission. So with that in mind, it would be great to hear a little bit more about Creatives for Climate. So what the mission is and how it's been growing and evolving.
Of course. I mean, as we all know, the creative industries really shape the cultural norms that influence our identities, our desires, our demand. What we see in the media influences everything that we do. It's hard to differentiate between what I, Maria, as an individual want, need, and value, and what I've been told to do so from, external communications and external voices. And unfortunately, nobody knows us better than the fossil fuel industry. So they've been using those cultural norms and cues to create social license for their products and in order to stand in the way of climate action. So in 2019, Extinction Rebellion both called out and invited the creative industry to step up. They talked about how, as mediators between the public and brands, the industry is uniquely capable of driving rapid behavior change and should be taking the lead rather than be driven. So while this is, a call out for the industry, we really saw it as an opportunity to rally all of the players. So in 2019, we held our first summit in Amsterdam in the Patagonia headquarters, and the movement's grown from there. So in that summit, it was the starting point for supporting a campaign that was calling on a ban on fossil fuel advertising in Amsterdam, which later passed. And as that community grew, eventually it led to us launching a virtual hub amidst COVID, when everybody was looking for ways to connect, to continue learning, and to find a way out of what was, quite a hopeless, unprecedented time. And then as the movement and community started growing, we used the industry tactics against it. Through stunts, we descended upon CAN, we launched a greenwash swatch, as well as guides and courses to help equip creatives all around the world to take action. So we've been growing from, how do we drive individual action and change to really industry transformation. So in 2023, we also launched the Ethical Agency Alliance and have formalized our academy options. So you see how this has started from, what was once a very grassroots campaign into actually the largest network of communicators that are really finding a way to shift the influence of the creative industry from perpetuating pollution to really accelerating solutions. So today we have a dual focus on information integrity, which is really helping, do less harm, and then also on uplifting the narrative and cultural power. So how do we harness the creative minds of this industry and the organizations to do more good through the stories that they tell?
Got it. And it sounds like then that you're no stranger to big events and that you've got a lot going on this COP. So what specifically are yourself and the rest of the team up to at this COP? What's the aim here?
So the biggest announcement that we've had at this COP is on the COP30 presidential stage. We launched our newest landmark guide, which is the Creative Integrity Playbook, to help agencies and brands align their influence with climate science and integrity. And it builds on Oxford's net zero service emission framework, and really is trying to find a way to give, agencies and brands tangible ways to shift from being a participant to really being a pioneer in this space. So there's actionable models and tools and frameworks like the Agency Integrity Curve, the Brief for Better initiative, as well as case studies from the US, the UK, Netherlands, and New Zealand that are really demonstrating how this works in practice. And we finish it with policy priorities. And I think that's the intersection of actually being here at COP and ensuring that we're working with the different coalitions that we're a part of and aligning with their efforts to call on the policy changes that are needed to make this happen. And ultimately, it's about pushing the fact that, creativity is a climate solution. This is the first time that culture and information integrity are formally recognized at COP. It's the reason why we're here in the blue zone. Typically organizations like ours are quote unquote relegated to spaces like the green zone. But the discussions that have been happening around these topics here have been incredible, and also, give me a bit of cautious optimism about what's possible. One of the things that's unique about this COP is, the fact that the presidency is aligned around this action agenda. So as Creatives for Climate, we're participating in 3 different pathways to accelerate action. So this is centered around preserving truth and defending information integrity, scaling storytelling that accelerates a just transition, and building new skills and systems for a green economy. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the work that has brought us here today has happened in the months leading up to COP. And I think now the interesting bit is going to be what happens after. How do we move forward over the next 5 years? Because there's still so much work to be done. I mean, how can we have a world where COP30 has hired Edelman, an agency that also represents Shell, ExxonMobil, the American Petroleum Institute, to tell its climate story? There's a lot that we need to do in order to really commit to a just transition.
Yeah, as you mentioned there is a way to go, but there is also that statement of intent and that additional focus. So I believe this is the first COP where information integrity is an actual thematic agenda on the official theme. So when you were going into that, what was your general gut feeling about this year?
Yeah, this is huge news. Not only is it on the official agenda, but it's also been recognized by President Lula, Luiz Inácio da Silva, the Brazilian president, in his opening speech. It's also been talked about vastly by, Al Gore was here yesterday. Today and tomorrow are one of the thematic days of this COP30 centered around information integrity. And so there's been several sessions and negotiations around the topic in all different aspects of it. And this historic integration is really in large part thanks to the advocacy of both the Brazilian government and the Global Initiative on Information Integrity for Climate Change. And so really it's about, how do we harness this window of opportunity to codify this commitment? Creatives for Climate is a part of CAD, which is the Climate Action Against Disinformation Coalition. There's over 90 different organizations that are a part of it. And yesterday they launched a landmark open letter really calling on policymakers to take immediate action. And in some of the sessions, yesterday, one of the speakers from MSF mentioned, we can't fight climate-related epidemics with manipulated narratives. Climate disinformation isn't just careless, it's intentional. And it's not a natural phenomenon, it's deliberately pollutant. It influences all aspects of the ecosystem. So this is a really important moment for us to take stock on what needs to be done and really prioritize those actions. Some of those actions include ensuring that digital platforms and ad tech are held accountable, that we're promoting cross-sector and international collaboration by really coordinating a global response and holding governments, civil societies, media, tech companies accountable so that data is being shared, capacity is being built, and we're anticipating obstruction tactics. And ultimately, it's also about protecting the truth, right? Because protecting the truth means protecting the people. And this is in line with, a lot of the policy recommendations that we've integrated in Creatives for Climate Creative Integrity Playbook. So it's amazing to see all the conversations happening and to see information integrity really recognized as a core lever that we need to protect and advance in order to accelerate climate action.
Obviously something I'm happy to see as well as a journalist and as someone that works a lot on greenwashing trends as well. And I wanted to ask you about that, given that Creatives for Climate is now a truly global organisation. I wanted to ask whether you've seen any differences in misinformation or greenwashing in different regions.
Yeah, there's similarities in terms of prevalence and consumer attitudes around the world. So consumers in different parts of the globe are becoming more aware of the different tactics that are being used, and they're becoming distrustful of the communications coming out of different brands and organizations. I think the biggest difference is in regulation as well. So Europe, for example, has one of the most mature regulatory and enforcement environments. I think these are still quite nascent in Latin America and in Asia. Regulation is improving. So for example, in China and South Korea, they're drafting laws to tackle greenwashing. And in Brazil, again, there's conversations happening. In North America, of course, I think the impact of Trump's presidency around green hushing, for example, has been massively felt. And I think in Latin America, there's newer waves of sustainability reporting and ESG integration. There have been lots of controversial campaigns. I don't know if you were keeping up with Cannes this year, but actually in Brazil, a few agencies were called out and had to withdraw their awards due to misleading and controversial statements. But it's interesting to see, for example, in South Africa, earlier this year, there was a report released called Smoke and Mirrors, Decoding Fossil Fuel Industry Advertising in South Africa, compiled by the Fossil Ad Ban campaign. You're seeing similar organizations coming together in different parts of the world to address this issue in different ways. But unfortunately, it's something that's so widespread in different parts of the world. And with globalization, I think more and more people are privy to it. I think now it's time for regulations to really step up.
It does feel like that is on the horizon in some places at least. And as you mentioned, there's also that risk of green hushing. So lots to be mindful of for the months ahead. And you've mentioned several times that it's what happens between the COPs that is the most important. So I wanted to ask what comes next after the COP for you and your team.
So one of the big things here at COP, we obviously have launched our creative integrity playbook. Now it's about putting it into practice. So we're really inviting as many agencies and brands as possible to join our Ethical Agency Alliance. Here at COP, we also unveiled a show reel of some of the members of the Ethical Agency Alliance, really showcasing the type of work that can, do more good in the world to inspire others to be a part of that. So we want to see the service emissions framework and, the practices within our creative integrity playbook really embedded into agencies all around the world. We're also continuing to grow our community. So any individual can become a member. Go to creatives4climate.co and you can take the pledge and, embody our principles and be a part of that community to go from that journey of being a learner in this space to really being a leader. And we want to see more local activations happening in different parts of the world and ensuring that we're able to capture what are those insights from, different parts of the world, that we can create a library to inspire more and more people to take action. And we're also looking for, partners for funding. I think with every community grassroots organization, you're always under-resourced. So how do we join forces with the organizations that can help us fulfill this mission? So if you're interested in becoming an ambassador, in leading local activations, in being one of our partners and helping us combat misinformation, help us, decarbonize the advertising industry, get in touch and follow us on social media to see how you can be a part of it. But, I think as somebody who's been in the creative industry for over 15 years, it's hard to, it's hard to stay hopeful in these times. And I think being a part of a global community with 7,000 other people is what, makes me feel like we can actually do something about that we can, reverse the tides and shift the narrative. So we're hoping that as many people as possible can join our movement and join our cause.
Great. So anyone listening in creative industries there, a call to keep collaborating and keep really thinking about your levers for change in the weeks ahead. Maria, that's unfortunately all the time that we have. I know you're super busy in the Blue Zone today, but thank you very much for taking the time to come on COP30 Covered.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's a pleasure chatting to you.
Yes, thank you once again to Maria for her time. And as she said, you can find out more about the Creative Integrity Playbook by searching for Creatives for Climate online. So this builds on tools that are already out there, like the Oxford Net Zero Serviced Emissions Framework. So some further bedtime reading for our creative listeners. That's almost everything for today, but try not to miss us too much because we will be back tomorrow when our focus is turning to climate finance, as Sidi said, always a sticky part of the agenda. In the meantime, you can check out all of our written COP coverage on edie.net, so you can expect daily roundups of the news in brief, as well as detailed explainers and information on how to attend our COP-related events. So that is everything for today. We'll see you on Friday. But for today, it's a goodbye from Matt.
Bye-bye.
A goodbye from Sidi.
Goodbye.
And a goodbye from me. Goodbye.